Welcome back to Monday's show with Nadia Sawalha, Scott Capurro and Sarah Kaywood. Sarah, as I mentioned earlier, is going to have the rest of the headlines for you shortly, including the very latest from Japan, including terrifying aftershocks and the prospect of radioactive meltdown. And we'll discuss the fast food boss who reckons British women are minging. You'd have thought with our soaring weight problem we'd like a couple of whoppers. Anyway, but first, do you see the latest three-parent IVF technique as a scientific wonder or a humanitarian disaster? 0207 173 5555 is the number if you've got something to say. And the technique, as I mentioned earlier, must be approved by medics and MPs before it could become commercially available, where it could be used to save around 100 babies from all manner of nasty diseases and disabilities. Now, before the break, Nadia said she doesn't really agree with IVF. Sarah said she'd happily donate her DNA to help others, while Scott thinks only rich people should be allowed to be rich, good-looking people.
Yes, thank you.
Let's hear what you have to say, Kirsty.
OK, we'll take Jane first on line one.
Jane, good morning.
Morning.
Morning. So, three parents to produce one baby.
Yes, I totally agree. I think it's wrong for you to disagree, actually, because my daughter was 19 and she had mitochondrial disease and she died in November the 15th, 2009.
Right.
And we didn't know she had it until she was getting tested in 2008. But the effects that it had on her led her to being in a wheelchair, having seizures. She was really scared.
Jane, it is a terrible thing to lose a loved one. I lost my nephew, if you watch regularly, 16 years old in a car crash. We lose people all the time. The problem I've got is using three people to produce healthy babies. To me, does echo eugenics. It's the idea of creating a perfect race, free of disease, and that's what Adolf Hitler wanted to do.
No, what it is, if you can find it, why can't you use three parents to get around the mitochondrial disease and question that, but yet you can use test tube babies to make a baby for parents that can't.
Well, no, I mean, Nadia has a problem with that, so she's more consistent than I am.
Well, the thing is if you can use test tube and you can use research for trying to cure cancer and AIDS, etc.,
yeah.
Why can't you use three parents to give some people a child that's going to live a long and happy life rather than...
Well, Jane, I kind of inferring, when Janet Ellis was here last week, she and I were doing a lot of talking about this, and she has a mother-in-law who's very ill with Alzheimer's, and we were discussing, actually, that perhaps the endless quest for cures for cancer or keeping people alive when every other aspect of their being is in decay may not be a good thing to do either, that we're just obsessed with keeping everybody alive and getting rid of diseases, and that we're not really thinking about the consequences of this, which ultimately, even though Scott was joking, if you look at it globally, it's just that wealthy people will be able to afford. Your African man living in a hut is not going to be allowed three-parent IVF, nor is he going to have any IVF. He won't be able to afford to do it. We have an overpopulated world, dwindling resources, and we're obsessed with keeping people alive and eradicating disease. And it doesn't make sense to me, Jane. Because
the thing is the mother doesn't actually know that she's going to have a child that's got mitochondrial diseases until the baby's there and it's born and it develops.
Well, they can screen, which is how they can do this technique.
They've only just started to learn how to do that. It's been going on for a lot of years, this research into mitochondrial diseases, and there's a hell of a lot of mitochondrial diseases out there, and they vary from one Alzheimer's right up to what my daughter had, which is POLGU1, which is very rare, and 2 strains of Alpers syndrome. The thing is it is not fair for anybody, especially the government, I don't agree with it, to say it's going to overpopulate, because the country's going to have children anyway, so why not let people who have got the chance to have a healthy child have that chance?
I can see Sarah nodding away.
I suffered because they had to watch my daughter die.
I can't think of anything more heartbreaking, and I just wish that this, these techniques were available now and could have saved her life. I just think if it was you, Matthew, if it was somebody close to you, Sarah, it's very difficult.
I'll say again, I had my 16-year-old nephew, the best man at my wedding, killed in a crash, a healthy baby that's turned into a dead teenager. Like, people die all the time. People get hideous diseases all the time. And we're living in a world where we're going to half increase the population within 40 years, where petrol is running out, where we can't afford to clothe and feed half the population, it seems, of the world as it is.
I mean, there's no
when
balance.
Is it going to stop?
There's no balance in the world anyway. Unfortunately, the gap between, you know, the poverty-stricken developing countries and
well, maybe we should be putting all the resources,
anyway.
and it must cost, I don't know, but I'm guessing it will cost millions to perfect a technique for 3 parents to produce 1 child, when we could be perhaps putting clothes on the back of the children we already have and putting food and water in their bellies. You know, I mean, just because you know, it is a terrible thing that happens to Jane.
Things happening.
Right.
I think that we just have a hunger that is just insatiable to make sure that we feel no pain or agony or suffering. Now, of course, Jane, my heart absolutely goes out to you. But I just don't think that we can carry on trying to...
She's not talking about designer babies, though. It's not
like... It is a designer baby. It's a baby by design. It's a baby by design.
And you said 100 babies, and I just don't think 100 babies is going to contribute to the population explosion.
No, but can you imagine the cost of it for 100 babies? I mean, we can't sort out every single problem. I mean, the cost is going to be vast in comparison to the amount of people that we can help.
It can pay for its own costs. Like, you get a baby with a dorsal fin on it, or a third eye, some specialty talent that'll pay for itself. That's what I think. Right? Yes. A baby with an ear up here. Hello.
Or an eye in its index
Interesting. Now we're talking.
Order in the panel. Jane, thank you for your call. And you are not alone with that view. We have many other callers online. Let's hear what they have.
OK, we'll take Sheila next on line 3.
Sheila, good morning.
Hi, Matthew. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear, yeah.
Oh, good.
Go on, what would you like to say?
Well, basically, I think that nature is regulating the population.
Trying.
Well, yeah, but it's doing it as well, because look at the number of women that can't get pregnant, and also loads of people being born gay. I mean, it's something I've been thinking about for the last few years, and when I heard that animals were being born gay as well,
yeah.
I thought, well, you can't call that a lifestyle...
That's true, isn't it, Scott?
Yes, I know.
A lifestyle choice, is it, for an animal?
Yes, a lifestyle choice for an animal.
So it must be that nature is making them gay. So if nature's making animals gay, nature's also making humans gay. So that must be natural
to reduce the population, to put the brakes on the population.
I think it may be an inbuilt thing in the DNA, you know, going right back thousands of millions of years, that if this were to happen, because it is a very small planet when you think about it.
Do you know what, Sheila? You are not alone with those views. I find myself, I wobble all over the place, but particularly as I get in middle age, but I am finding myself... I do also think that, you know, we have a lot of people crammed into a small place, we consume a lot, we pollute a lot, and the checks and balances that are, you know, nature has checks and balances, and science keeps trying to override them.
Yeah, I know. It's bad, isn't it?
It's terrible, Sheila, is
but
what it is.
But just because you're gay doesn't mean you don't want to reproduce. I have a lot of gay friends that have perfect little babies, designer babies,
right,
that they look after very well.
But isn't that the whole point that Sheila's making, is that, you know, population is controlled by natural consequences. If you put loads of rats together, they breed and breed and breed and breed until they either start poisoning themselves with their own excrement or they run out of food.
Like the way gays do. How do you draw the parallel between rats and gays? I'm so offended. God, call my agent. No, I did do a special, though, for Channel 4, a competing channel, that about gay behavior in the animal kingdom.
Yeah.
And we followed around some swans who had found each other. 2 gay swans found each other. And they're raising little babies together, a little baby. And it did seem as though, yes, nature does look after its own.
So as populations grow beyond beyond their environmental capacity, things change.
Yeah,
right.
I think so.
Do you think, I mean, Matthew, do you think that if you're worried about the population explosion, do you think that there's an argument to limit the amount of children that people can have?
Yeah, 100%.
But when they did that in China, what happened with the Chinese families was that earthquake took out a lot of the children, because a lot of schools they lost the only child they had.
Yeah. And the population is still the planet is still overpopulated. I don't understand the point.
China's under control now. The population is under control.
People have children die all the time. That's the fact that we try and avoid. We want to live forever, but that's not how it is. And, yeah, they're big questions. Sheila, thank you.
We were all raised on Fame, the movie, and I want to live forever, right?
Sheila, thank you.
That's my mantra. We have Alan next on line 4.
Alan, good morning, Alan.
Good morning.
What was your take on this then, Alan?
I do believe this should be going ahead.
Right.
Because once you start giving treatment, the IVF treatment, is in the long term you'll get a cure for children or people with metabolic diseases. I've got a little boy who's got a thing called Pearson syndrome. He was diagnosed at 18 months, and his outlook isn't good. He won't live past 5 years of age. Once you start IVF and start getting treatments or cures of how they can produce children, then in the long term they will get a cure, which they believe in the long term will be one injection will cure some metabolic diseases.
Yeah.
That can only be a good thing.
Well, that's the argument I'm making, Alan, is I don't know endlessly curing people of everything. It's good for the parents, it's good for their friends, their relatives, it could be good for their employers, but for the planet as a whole, is it a good thing, keeping people alive for longer and longer and longer?
Until someone's got a person who suffers from that particular thing you're talking about, in this metabolic disease, you can't comment. There's no way in the world
Alan, people make comments about things they don't know about all the time. Religion, for example. Right? The idea that you can shut off an argument by saying, well, you don't know, is a nonsense, Alan.
I'm not saying you can't...
You said I couldn't speak. You said I couldn't understand. You're just saying that I have no empathy, that I'm incapable of empathising.
No, what I'm saying is everyone will have their own thoughts and have their own empathy about things, but until you're actually in that situation, you won't know the true feeling of it.
OK, but you're not... You're looking at your individual... your predicament. And I'm trying to say, leave our own, for want of a better word, selfish predicaments to one side and look at the global predicament. When we've got children starving to death, we're spending millions of pounds enabling people to have more children. Why don't we look after the ones we have?
It's a very selfless person that puts to one side for the global good, though.
I'm saying that...
I don't know anybody who is that selfless,
MPs, right, represent not just the individual, they represent society, and that when they form the laws that govern society, and when they consider these treatments and these IVF advancements, they now have to consider them in a global perspective. And it's none of it's very palatable. And Nadia started off, and I know that I'm not making myself very popular with this either. I just want to throw out the idea that not every advancement, while it can do good for the individual, is necessarily going to do good for the planet. Thank you, Alan. Ooh. Oh, quite glad we got through that one.
You can really bring the room down.
Yeah, I can, thank you. And I'll be honest, I think Sarah's got the headlines from Japan, which ain't going to help coming up after the break. As I said, we're going to get a rail tale of joy, actually, amidst the disaster that is post-tsunami Japan. And as the condoms go soft on Britain's drink problem, we'll hear all about the country's youngest alcoholic. 3 years old, by the way. All the details after the ads. We'll see you in 3.